Here are two plots. Same size, same street, same price, same view, same soil, same everything you can see standing on them. And one of them, you can build a comfortable family house on. The other, you can barely fit a shed. Nothing on the surface tells you which is which. The difference is invisible. It's written in the zoning code, in a few numbers buried in a document most buyers never open, in language they assume they can't read. And that difference is the single biggest swing in what a plot is actually worth. I read land for a living, the rules over it, across dozens of countries, and I'm going to show you the 4 numbers that decide what you can build on any plot on Earth, and how to find them in any local plan, in any language. This is the buildable envelope. For numbers, the same for everywhere, and the trap that fools people who skip them. Here's the mental model that unlocks every zoning code on the planet. Strip away the legalese and the language, and almost every code is doing the same 4 things, drawing the same 4 numbers. 1. Setbacks. How far your building must sit back from each boundary. 2. Coverage. How much of the plot's ground area your building is allowed to cover. 3. Height. How tall you can go, in meters or in stories. And 4. The master constraint, floor area ratio, the total amount of floor space you're allowed, as a multiple of the plot's size. Together, those 4 carve a 3D shape out of the air above your plot, the buildable envelope. Everything you could legally build has to fit inside it. Learn to read those 4 numbers, and a zoning document in Dutch, German, or Polish stops being a wall and becomes a recipe. Let's take them one at a time. Start with the one that quietly steals the most space, setbacks. A setback is a required gap between your building and a boundary, so many meters from the front, the sides, the rear. It sounds minor. It isn't. On a small plot, generous setbacks can shrink the area you can actually build on by 1/3 or more, and they bite hardest exactly where land is most expensive and plots are smallest. Picture a tidy plot, then push a line in from every edge by the required distance. What's left, that shrunken core in the middle, is the only ground your building footprint can sit on. This is why 2 plots of identical size can be wildly different. A narrow plot with wide side setbacks can be left with a building zone barely wide enough for a corridor. Setbacks also decide your relationship with the neighbors, the gap that keeps their windows and yours apart. So the first number to find, before you fall in love with a plot, is how far in do the setback lines push from each edge, and what's honestly left in the middle. Numbers 2 and 3 work as a pair. How much ground and how high. Coverage, sometimes called the footprint ratio, caps how much of the plot your building can cover. A 40% coverage on a 1,000 square meter plot means a maximum footprint of 400, and that's before setbacks, which often leave you with less than the coverage rule alone would allow. The 2 stack, whichever is more restrictive wins. Then height lifts that footprint into the 3rd dimension. It's usually given as a maximum in meters, or a number of stories, or both, and sometimes as a ceiling that steps down near boundaries to protect a neighbor's light. Multiply the footprint you're allowed by the height you're allowed, and you've got a rough volume. But here's the catch that the next number exists to enforce. A big footprint and a tall height limit could, on paper, let you build an enormous block, and most codes don't actually allow that. Which is exactly why there's a 4th number sitting on top of all of it. The 4th number is the one that ties the whole thing together, floor area ratio. FAR, also called plot ratio, floor space index, or in Germany the GFZ. It's the total amount of floor space, across all stories, you're allowed, expressed as a multiple of the plot's area. A FAR of 1 on a 1,000 square meter plot means 1,000 square meters of total floor area. You could do it as one big single story, or 2 stories at half the footprint each, or 3 smaller ones. But the total is capped. This is the master constraint, because it limits the thing you actually sell or live in, the floor space, regardless of how you arrange it. Coverage and height define the box. FAR defines how much you're allowed to fill it. And the binding constraint, the one that actually limits your build, is whichever of the 4 runs out first. Sometimes it's the setbacks, sometimes the height. Often, on a good plot, it's the FAR. Find all 4, see which one bites first, and you know the real size of what you can build before you've paid an architect a cent. Now the showcase, what good planning data actually looks like. Some countries have made these 4 numbers genuinely readable. The Netherlands runs everything through a single national digital system. You can pull the formal land use rules for a plot online by address, machine readable. Germany has the Bebauungsplan, the B plan, a formal local plan that states the coverage and the floor area ratio as explicit numbers, the GRZ and the GFZ, right there in the legend. Poland has the MPZP, the local zoning plan, which spells out the same constraints, though only a portion of the country is covered by one. The rest is decided case by case. At their best, these documents hand you the buildable envelope on a plate. Open the plan, find your plot zone, read off the 4 numbers. No guessing, no rumor. That's the gold standard, a plot's build potential, stated in public, in advance. But, and you know the pattern by now, most of the world's local plans are nowhere near that clean. So here's how you read any of them. Here's the signature problem and the portable fix. Your plot is probably governed by a local plan written in dense, specific, often foreign legalese, and most buyers take one look and give up, or trust whatever the seller says. Don't. Because no matter the language or the format, you are hunting for the same 4 numbers, and they're almost always in there. So the method is simple and it travels anywhere. 1. Get the zoning designation for the exact plot, what category it falls in. 2. In that category's rules, find the 4, the setback distances, the coverage percentage, the height limit, the floor area ratio. They'll have local names, but the concepts are universal, and a translation tool plus these 4 words will get you most of the way. 3. If the local plan genuinely doesn't state one of them, that's your single most important question for the planning office, not a thing to assume in your favor. And 4. The one people skip, confirm the plot's zoning hasn't been overlaid by something else, a heritage designation, a flood constraint, a protected view, that quietly overrides the base numbers. 4 numbers, 1 designation, 1 overlay check. That's a zoning code in any country, decoded. Now the trap that catches people even when they've found the numbers. A plot can be marketed as buildable, zoned for housing, has permission in principle, and still be almost useless. Because buildable describes the category, not the envelope. A big plot with deep setbacks, an awkward shape, a low coverage cap, and a tight FAR can be left with a buildable core so small that nothing sensible fits. A technically buildable plot you can actually build a home on. The envelope is what matters, not the label. And there's a second half to this, the one nobody checks until it's too late. The 4 numbers don't just decide what you can build, they decide what your neighbor can build, right up to that setback line. Read their zone too. That empty field beside your dream plot, zoned for 3 stories, can become a wall across your light and your view, entirely legally, the year after you move in. Buildable is a starting question, never an answer. The envelope, yours and the neighbor's, is the answer. Step back, and zoning says something almost reassuring. Planning systems look wildly different country to country, different laws, languages, colors, forms. But underneath, they're nearly all answering the same four questions. How far back? How much ground? How high? How much floor? The values differ everywhere. A Dutch FAR and a Spanish one mean different things, and you must never apply one country's numbers to another's plot. But the framework is portable. Learn to read the buildable envelope once, and you can walk up to a plot in a country you've never visited, find its four numbers, and know roughly what can rise from it. This is the asymmetry flipped in your favor. The rules feel local and impenetrable, but the structure of the rules is universal. Most buyers see a foreign planning document and see a wall. You'll see four numbers and a recipe. That's not a workaround. That's just reading land like someone who builds for a living. So back to where we started. The two identical plots, same price, one you can build on and one you can't. Here's the honest version. The land wasn't different. The envelope was. And the envelope is just four numbers most buyers never look up. Setbacks, coverage, height, floor area. Find those four, see which one bites first, check the overlays, and read the neighbor's zone while you're at it. And the invisible thing that swings a plot's value more than almost anything else becomes something you can read in an afternoon, in any country, in any language. The plot doesn't tell you what you can build. The four numbers do. Quick honest note. This is educational, not planning or design advice. For a real decision, read the actual local plan and talk to a planner. Zone for it is not, you'll get permission. And pulling the buildable envelope for any plot, the four numbers where the plan states them, the read where it doesn't, plus the overlays and the neighbor's rights. That's literally the tool I built. It's called Parcella. It's mine, and the link's in the description. If reading land like this is your kind of thing, stick around. The channel is full of it. See you in the next one.